I know you told me yesterday when we spoke that you weren't necessarily envisioning Smoke as being a record that would even be performed live.
Right.
Initially, right?
I wasn't invited on any tours. I didn't know who was going to hear the record. I made the record completely in isolation, in different places, different apartments that I've lived in over a year and a half or so, 2 years maybe. And yeah, I didn't show the music really to anyone but my friends, and for that reason I wasn't asked to perform, and I didn't have to perform, and I also had music that went beyond my own means for performing. My song files are 30 or 40 tracks of just different instruments, so thinking about how I could try and translate that to a live show is pretty impossible. And I didn't really want to think about it either. I mean, it was more important to me to get the songs the way I wanted them at home. At some point, I had accumulated enough songs for an album, and I sent the music to this guy, Miguel DePedro, who runs this label Tiger Beat 6. And we had a relationship prior to that slightly. I did a remix for one of their artists, and they said, we'll put it out, you know. But it wasn't like, they didn't discover me or anything or sign me as, you know, someone that I knew. So I really had no clue what the future would hold. And then when Greg Gillis, who does the Girl Talk Music Project, invited us on tour, then suddenly it was like, oh, you have to become a performer now.
So I want to get a little bit into the album and sort of how it, I'm curious as to how you write. Do you sort of like work on one song at a time, or is it bits and pieces here and there, and then you come back to a song that's not finished and sort of wrap that up? And
I think when I'm really productive, I'm working at one song at a time. But there'll be times where I'm working on getting a lot of beginning ideas out, where I have a lot of kind of scratch ideas. I have probably hundreds, maybe 200 song files like that. A lot of stuff that came close to being finished that could have been on Smoke that I just didn't want to spend the time finishing, or maybe I was going to include it in the next record or something. But yeah, sometimes I'll be really productive at accumulating a lot of scratch ideas. But then when I have the momentum of a song going, I'm usually just working on one song. It's easier that way.
Do you remember sort of what the earliest songs that were done for the record were?
Yes, on the record, In the Club was one of the first songs, Headlines. The last song, Lice in the Rainbow, I think that was the first thing I called White Williams. I think that's why I put it on the album. Headlines and In the Club were the earliest, and then Route to Palm is more like later stuff.
Back to some of the songs on the album. When I first heard New Violence, I've told these guys this too, it felt like, well, not only did I think it was great, but it felt like, I don't know, familiar in a way. It felt like a song that I'd either heard before or a variation of something I'd heard before. And almost like I don't know, this is something really like classic sort of sound to it. And I don't know if when you created it, if it felt that way.
I mean, I think I've just heard a lot of different kinds of music. You know, modern stuff that's playing on the radio that day, and then also stuff from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever. And there's certain production choices that I make that I think are better than some of the production choices that are made today. You know, I like drum sounds that are dry and up front, and I like guitars that have a certain quality, that don't have a lot of high, and I like music that's produced that doesn't have a lot of high frequency. Whereas if you listen to a lot of modern music, a lot of pop music, stuff that's on the radio, stuff that's on MTV, it's very bright. And that's just something, when you listen to Fleetwood Mac or something on Rumors, it's just, there's no sounds above a certain frequency. You know, you could say that about a lot of records made at that time. And also the 80s too. A lot of music from the 80s has the same kind of quality. So yeah, it's just an observation from knowing recording and knowing production, and also my tastes that kind of bring me to, you know, choosing whether or not, should I make this guitar sound like Slipknot, or should I make it sound like something, you know, that I enjoy, and not something that's just gonna agree with the way something like what most people are listening to on the radio.
In searching for reference points, you know, I think when people written about your record a lot, you know, they come back to things like either Gary Newman, or I've certainly seen enough Mark Bolan comparisons, and I saw Kraftwerk, I saw with New Violence, I've seen Beck mentioned a couple times. I mean, do you feel like any of these are they valid? When people sort of gravitate toward quote unquote 80s music, is that fair?
I mean, it's kind of a reductive way to look at the music to just kind of attribute it to a decade of, but I mean, it has a lot of the same ingredients that a lot of pop music had in the 80s. The fact that there's synthesizers, but it's just not, I guess it's not as normal as I would think that it is to use a synthesizer in pop music, but yeah, I guess if you turn on the radio right now and listen to, you know, put on your rock or alternative stations, there's very little like synthesizers that you hear, or quantized rhythms, you know, and it's more something that you hear like on the rap station. You hear more samples and synths and drum machines, and that's actually the type of pop music I prefer for right now. I'd rather listen to rap music than any rock music that's on the radio. It's all garbage. But it's true. It's so bad. It's so veiled, but rap music is interesting, and they're allowed to.
Not all hip hop, obviously.
Not all of it, but a lot of it on the radio is more interesting to me because if you listen to one song on the radio, there's some sample of an old song from the 50s that's being manipulated, and then you turn on, and then, you know, the next song that comes on the radio uses synthesizers and these crazy vocal harmonies, and I feel like there's a lot more freedom and diversity. It's way more abstract, and it has way more to do with music like Kraftwerk and experimental music and you know, the kind of music that we're interested in than, you know, a lot of rock music. A lot of the tools that I use are the same tools that someone from a more electronic music background would use, and I'm influenced a lot by music from Warp Records, and you know, I used to listen to a lot of stuff from Schematic Records and a lot of more like electronic music.
For more on White Williams, visit Rhapsody.com/White Williams.